I welcome you to the Center for Sound Communities and to Unama'ki or Cape Breton. I'd like to acknowledge that the Center for Sound Communities and Cape Breton University are on the unceded territories of the Mi'kmaq people, Mi'kma'ki. And Unama'ki is the Mi'kmaq word for Cape Breton Island. Nindelawisi Marcia, my name is Marcia Ostashewski. I'm the director of the Center for Sound Communities. It's been my great pleasure and privilege to work with Graham and Clifford Marshall, Graham and Marshall and Clifford Paul, who are our guests today in this inaugural event that starts off a speaker series on the human voice. It's also running in conjunction with a class on the same topic. And this class was inspired by an earlier collaboration with J. Martin Daughtry at NYU, who was visiting in Cape Breton many years ago for the Singing Storytellers Symposium. It's a larger project that got us talking about these issues, excuse me, and engaging with local communities. Since that time, I and many people at the Center for Sound Communities have been working with Graham and Clifford and many in Membertou and Eskasoni and the other communities in Unama'ki. And so I've asked them to join us today to talk about the human voice and Indigenous voice from their perspectives. Ninbem Kadudamasi Mi'kmaq Wiesen. I'm just learning to speak Mi'kmaq. And so I'm mindful too of voices that are in this classroom together. And without, I think, any further delay, I'd like to introduce to you Graham Marshall and Clifford Paul. Graham is a council member in Membertou First Nation Council. He is a steward of and a knowledge holder for Mi'kmaq traditional culture. He's a traditional drummer and singer. And he's been working with the Center for Sound Communities in a number of collaborative projects, leading them, including a project that led to a publication that won an award. And we'll talk a little bit more about that later. Clifford Paul is also a traditional knowledge holder, also of Membertou, and also involved in the project that resulted in a publication that won the award. And they've both taken time out of their work days to join us, and I'm really grateful for that. Wilalin, thank you, Graham and Clifford. So I'm not sure if you'd like me to begin with a question, or if there might be a good way for me to just welcome you to the class and to, if you would, share with us your perspectives on human voice and Indigenous voice.
Just give us a second here. Graham is trying to fix something with his computer. Can you hear us? Okay, perfect. Okay, so thank you for that beautiful introduction, Marcia. I know the lives we live and the things we do. You could do an introduction for a good 30-40 minutes. So I really enjoyed your introduction. My name is Clifford Paul. I come from the First Nation community of Membertou, which is which is within the province of Nova Scotia. Unama'ki, yes, it represents Cape Breton Island, but it's translated to the land of the fog. But if you spent early mornings in Unama'ki, especially this time of year, you'll notice the fog is lifting very slowly, and it's called the land of the everlasting fog. It's just one of the beautiful features of living in Unama'ki. So spiritually, my name is Running Grizzly Bear Man, and I come from the Mi'kmaq district of Unama'ki, which is one of 7 Mi'kmaq districts or home territories of our people. We have a very proud history, very proud ancestry. Peace and friendship treaties were made here because we look at the words peace and friendship. We defended the peace so much that the British could not defeat us in war. They asked us to sign treaties of peace and friendship so that they can survive in our territories, and that we can do the things that we are supposed to be doing in our territories as well. So, you know, we live in a beautiful place, and the Creator has taken care of us that way. And I am a proud father of 5 adult children, aged 29 to 39, and 11 grandkids, aged 2 to 18. So I have a lot to pass on. I have a legacy to uphold, and just being part of the storytelling, the music, the songs, all the things we're doing in partnership with the Center for Sound Communities at the Cape Breton University. That helps me formalize the stories, and it helps me to bring our voices to the forefront in our own community, in my own family, and with the nation, the Mi'kmaq Nation. And now, through this amazing venue at CBU with the Center for Sound Communities, we have an international audience that we did not expect to have. So very pleased to be here and very happy to be part of today.
Yeah, thank you, Clifford. And, you know, as Clifford, we're first cousins, so we have to say that right.
Yeah, that's right.
We're, you know, we've been to a lot of places, you know, throughout the world. Nindalawasi, Graham Marshall, Bemkaduudamasi, Member 2 Chief and Council. Such a pleasure and honor to be here and chat with all you guys and show you our piece of the world here. And spiritually, my name is He Who Talks to the Crows. So, you know, we're here with this great collaboration we have with Sound Communities and with Marcia Ostashewski of the amazing projects that we are doing and continue to do so on so many future developments that we are doing. So when we have this connection, when we have this relationship, you know, of truth and reconciliation on working with the Indigenous and non-Indigenous people, you know, I truly believe that we are the pride and the prime example of how Indigenous and non-Indigenous colleagues can co-succeed with each other. And the Sound Communities does that. But also, and most importantly, is to lift every human being up in their background and traditional music and ethnicity, is that we're there to lift each other up throughout the world, to recognize each other, and most importantly, respect one another and learn from one another through academia as well. So yes, very honored and very grateful to be in your presence today. Wallah.
Thank you for that opening, gentlemen. I'm wondering, for everyone's sake, both of you have made reference to work that we're doing at the Center for Sound Communities, as I referenced the article. And the students of my class who have joined us today have read the article, which is in the Yearbook for Traditional Music, Fostering Reconciliation Through Research Creation and Indigenous Methodologies. And I'm wondering, though, if you might be able to speak a little bit about your role in the project, and just to frame it a bit. It's a project that involved applied theater and applied ethnomusicology, together with youth and guided by elders and traditional knowledge holders. We met weekly over a period of several months in Member 2 First Nation. The community wanted to create a performance that told the story of the forced relocation of the people of Gundawikduk Reserve community, who were moved up into the present day Member 2 First Nation site. And stories were gathered through oral history and interview processes, through looking at documents. And in a minute, I'll put a URL for a short film, a documentary film that you can watch into the chat if you're interested, if you haven't already seen that, that tells you a little bit more about the process and more of the people who are involved. Um, but I am wondering, Graham and Clifford, if you might speak a little bit about your role and how you feel your voices and Indigenous voices that led the project, how that was important for you and your community.
Okay, yeah, that's a very interesting question, and I'm glad you asked. Me and Graham, we grew up on construction sites as boys, and we come from a community of builders. And my father, his father, they grew up on construction sites with their dads as well. And we developed, Membertou is a community of builders. That's how we grew up. And that's how we learned a very strong virtues. We had two sets of toolboxes to work with. Our fathers gave us the strength and ability to do manual labor, basically young slaves who didn't get paid, to help our fathers finish off their contracts, whether it be stonemason work, drywall and carpentry, you name it, they did it all, and we did it all. And our fathers taught us to stand up to racism in Sydney, Nova Scotia in the 1970s and 1980s. It was really, really rugged here. And they gave us the fortitude to stand up and speak for ourselves and we got lots of stories on that. And then, they taught us one of the most important lessons they taught us was your name's attached to your work. And when I was working on a construction site with my dad, we were doing one of the fancy houses in Sydney, and they hired my dad to do the drywalling, and I'm just a little boy, about 10 years old. And I'm doing the drywall work, and I'm doing it fast. I'm really proud of myself. I'm doing it fast. Oh yeah, I'm a pro. My father comes up to me, taps me on the shoulder with his trowel. Strong man, very strong man. And he taps me on the trowel, gives me with the trowel on my shoulder, gives me a stern look. He says, "Son, you better do a good job." And I go, "I am doing a good job, Dad. I'm doing this, doing a great job." Yeah, blah, blah, blah. In my mind, I thought I was doing a good job because I was doing it fast. But really, if you do it too fast, you're going to create an air bubble that's going to pop out, and he's going to have to fix it down the road. So the cement would look nice when I apply it, but 2 hours later, when I leave the site, there are already bubbles there. So he says, "You got to do a good job, son. My name's attached to my work." And that was very profound on me. If you Google my name today, you will know that if you Google Moose Management in Nova Scotia, my name's attached to that. That's what I am. I'm a natural resource manager, Moose Management coordinator. I worked for the Micmac News right after that time with my dad. I never became a drywaller. I never became a contractor. I became a writer, and I worked for the Micmac News for a good 11 years. I'm the former editor of a historical newspaper, believe it or not. And you can look it up, Micmac News online, and you will find volumes and volumes of texts that I was responsible for, that I have written in the archives at Cape Breton University. People didn't believe me when I was a college student at age 36 that I was the former editor of a historical newspaper. And at that age, I still had volumes of text in the Beaton Institute. It was a nice way of letting people know that, my life experience, my work experience carried me through all these things. So, as a Moose Management coordinator, I can't sing. I'll admit, I'm not a great singer. I sing in ceremony, and that's between us and the people in the ceremony and the creator. So, I can't carry a tune if it had a handle on it, but I know I can keep a beat. And I'll give you a funny story. We had a moose camp, a youth camp in the Cape Breton Highlands, and we brought our drums, because every night we tell the stories and we sing the songs. So the kids will fall asleep around a fire inside the teepee as we're telling the stories and singing the songs. So we're singing honor song, going and I'm singing the best I could. And, you know, we're moose hunters, right? I'm also a terrible moose caller and a bad singer. But when I sang, a bull moose came to our camp, showed up. Big bull moose showed up. And they say, oh, Clifford, you can call moose. Yeah, but I'm singing. Every time I call moose, they don't listen to me. But when I'm going to have to sing to call in a moose now because it worked that night. And so, you know, as a moose management coordinator, I was asked to come in because of my traditional knowledge, my repertoire of traditional knowledge, recognized as a traditional knowledge holder. So I come in and I see my grandkids involved, I see other kids involved, I see adults involved, and I see elders involved. And I sit at age 58 now, but I sit in a very honorable place. I can be a connection to the youth, but I can also be a connection to the elders and those in between. So I felt I was a conduit for that communication. So when my elder tells me a story, I am hearing his voice or her voice, but I'm also hearing the voices of my ancestors. They are connecting us to the strength and resiliency of our ancestors from number two. And they are telling us stories from the first person perspective that they witnessed and stories that they heard. So I can tell the story, or I can hear the story from my cousin here, Graham. I'm hearing his voice, but I'm also hearing the voices of our ancestors. And that's the wonderful thing when we tell stories in our communities and we have children sitting there and we're passing the knowledge on to them. We're imparting that knowledge through music, through dance, through storytelling, through theater, all the things we are doing. They are receiving the messages of our ancestors. And it makes my heart sound really good when I hear them retell the stories. So as a conduit between the elders and the youth, I am actually a key person, again, a conduit between our ancestors and our future generations, because that is how the Mi'kmaq perspective is. I am here today in this spot here, but my mind is 7 generations back. My ancestors have propelled me to this place. I am also, my mind is ever conscious of the next 7 generations. Are the things I'm doing today, are the decisions we make in today, is the work I'm doing today going to positively impact the next 7 generations? So through this project, yes, it does help me serve that way. I am taking the story, I'm even getting shivers saying this, I'm taking the stories of my ancestors, connecting them with our elders and our youth, and moving it forward. So the Mi'kmaq way thought process, we're not linear thinkers. There's always constant flux and motion in where we are and how we are. So the venue through which we won that award, shared our stories, had the article done, did some productions, very powerful. And I'll leave it at that there because I got to save some words for my colleague here and explain his role. So that's my role, and that's how it transpires, and that's how my thinking is evolved around that role.
And Clifford, the question was, what was our role, Marcia? What was our role in Gunduit?
And yes, what was your role, and how do you feel? How do you feel that was important for you and for your communities? Your role in that project for the first,
Yeah. So with with the award that we have won with the cultural and traditional music, it solidifies and it validates me and Clifford's our family, our ancestors, and the stories that were passed down to us while we were boys.
Yes.
It validates our ancestors of oral stories and oral traditions that validates them into the Western world. And through settlers' eyes, through scientific, even though, that recognition, yeah, it's nice, but it's known throughout Mi'kmaq people for thousands and thousands of years of all of our stories through ceremonies and scientific ways that scientists now are, confirming for themselves that something we already known for thousands of years. So, with this collaboration that we have done, working with the elders and working with the youth of our community, as what Clifford was saying, it reiterates the sacredness of that ceremony of collaborating with each other, with all different age groups in our community. So these elders can go and tell these youth who their family is and who are they related to, and the stories, the backstories of these individuals that they had in everyday life, and that was the real connection with all the research as well of how these ancestors and our family, it was a glimpse into the day in the life of them to show their trials and tribulations and their accomplishments as well, that created legacies that, back in those days, you would not think, but those legacies have been created and are still going strong into Membertou today. So, Membertou is very, very important throughout the Mi'kmaq Nation, so as every other community in the Mi'kmaq Nation. But it gives us the ability to have the keys to unlocking our past and opening that door to find out more about our ancestors and to know more about our community. Like when we have a group of elders coming into a room, and the magic happens when the elders will start to remember stuff that when they were little boys and little girls of, yes, I remember that. I remember Gidgenu saying that to us, our grandmother, our great grandma, of saying different stories, and that validates of how our family unit operated, because it was everybody had a role. Our great grandfather was the gatekeeper of Gunduit, and was the most prominent man to say of who comes and goes into the community. And but we also have to remind ourselves of that oppressive state of mind that was inflicted onto Indigenous people for hundreds of years, and how that really, we can only go so far up. But our past chiefs fought that and fought the system that no, we can't do that anymore. We have to make sure that our community is for ourselves. So with those communities in Kings Row Reserve and Gunduit, to settle to a place today, a present day Membertou, was something that they were thinking of themselves, that their great grandchildren and great great grandchildren and grandchildren would have a nice, safe environment to live in today. And I'm pretty sure that they could be quite proud of what their legacy has created today. Me and Clifford are in a corner office in our trade and convention center doing this now, and just a little and I don't know if you guys can see our trade center and the Heritage Park, and can give you guys a one-hand view of what we have always accomplished. But as Ilnu people, we have to always recognize and be humble of where we come from. So when there's 13 communities in Mi'kmaq in Atlantic Canada, This is the 13 communities. It's not just membership. It's for the Mi'kmaq Nation. And this is the legacy that we leave behind. But it's also our job as these projects that come about today. This is the legacy that we leave behind for the next 7 generations, to go and put these stories, digitize them, that they are there for infinity. And with the oral traditions and stories, this is why collaborations like this have to be, we're forever grateful for this, very honored of having the ability to have something like this, so that now in the future, the next generations can know what they would leave behind in their legacy for the Mi'kmaq Nation.
Yeah, exactly. And I spoke of the tools that our fathers gave us: strength, stand up for yourself, a voice, be proud of your work, stand up to racism, and your name's attached to your work. We had a very nice toolbox from our dads. But also our moms taught us the virtues. They taught us respect, love. They taught us arts and crafts. They taught us to express ourselves emotionally, and to express ourselves artistically too. So the things our mothers imparted us were those virtues, but they saw value in education. Our fathers taught us to be workers, and nothing wrong with that. That is a great experience. But our mothers taught us the value of education and the importance of education. So we had 2 sets of toolboxes coming out of number 2, and that we can rely on each. If there's times where education is not getting me anywhere, I can always work with his dad, or work with my dad, or we can do a project together. Remember we painted that house so good?
Yeah.
And we have 2 sets of toolboxes. And so too with modern Western science and traditional knowledge, we blend that to do the things we do today. So we call it a 2-eyed seeing approach.
Could you speak a little bit about that, Graham? Or sorry, Clifford? Sorry, I see Graham's name up on the screen.
Yeah, okay.
Clifford's spoken about 2-eyed seeing in the past.
All right, okay. So we have a digital format here. Everybody envision, we're sitting around a fire, and we got a fire going. The stars are in the sky. The waves are coming in. We got the sights, the sounds, the smells of Mother Nature. We got this beautiful stimuli happening, and it's storytelling time. So the 2-eyed seeing, I'm going to explain it to you in that way. So you're hearing my voice, but you're also hearing the ancient voice of my ancestors, and you're also hearing the future voices of our future generations. So we're sitting around a fire, and I'm going to tell you a story. And it's a best example of 2-eyed seeing, so you can understand it. And I always do it through storytelling. You're blending the traditional knowledge with modern scientific knowledge, modern Western scientific knowledge, and you're going to use that to build the tenets and strengths of whatever you're working on. For me, I use that for a moose management plan, and to build a moose management plan so that we can manage moose and moose ecosystems in Punamak. That's pretty well my job. But 2-eyed seeing can be applied everywhere, so that even through song and dance, music, storytelling, you name it. So we're sitting at a fire. You got the sights, the sounds, the smells. So you're learning with all your senses. You're not reading a book and the story is written on pages and you're trying to shove that in your brain, memorize it, and write it on the test the next day. Hopefully that your memorization skills are good. This is long-term memory storage, and it's using patterns, and it's using all your senses. So we're sitting around a fire and I begin to tell a story, and I'll go, long, long time ago, in the time of legends. Our ancestors were living in a very harsh environment. It was pretty rugged. Survival was hard. And we were surrounded by animals that were big and fierce. We had the short-faced bear, which was big and fierce. We had the dire wolf, which was big and fierce. We had mastodons, the saber-toothed cat. Even the squirrel was big and fierce. Big sharp teeth. And then when our families were out trying to survive, they became food to these animals. And the families, through all their losses, said, it's time for prayer. It's time for prayer. We're not going to survive as a people in this very harsh environment, which was very cold as well. It's starting to get very cold. So they asked the Creator for help. And the Creator sent Glooskap to help us with this situation, to help us solve the problem. And Glooskap is our hero. Glooskap is not the Creator, but Glooskap will come and do the work of the Creator. So Glooskap will change the river, the flow of a river, if it will meet the needs and better serve the Ilnu, the humans of the land, us. Glooskap will change the landscape if it'll help us survive and make life easier. And there's legends around that. But in this legend, Glooskap decided to change the animals. So Glooskap took the short-faced bear, lovingly petted it and stroked it till it became the modern bears of today. Done so with the dire wolf, same thing, lovingly petted it and stroked it till it became the coyotes, wolves, foxes, canines of today. Did that with the giant squirrel, the giant beaver, done that with the saber-toothed cat. All these animals became a sleeker and more efficient animal. And Glooskap gave instructions to the animals. Now you must work with the humans, serve the humans, and not cause grief or fear. So today, 99 times out of 100, an animal will run away from you or will have an interaction with you, and there's no fear. Except if you get in between a mama bear and her cub, well, that's just a lack of common sense. You'll be in trouble. Same with the moose. So the instructions were for the animals to serve the humans. And we got along great up until this present day. We still get along great with the animals because of that, what Glooskap had done. So I'm telling you that story through my traditional lens, my traditional eye, the two-eyed seeing model, traditional, modern, Western, scientific. So through the traditional lens, I'm telling you the story of evolution in a very colorful way, of how we were eyewitnesses to the extinction of the megafauna, and that our legend takes us back to that time. It gives us a fingerprint on that time to when there was an extinction of the megafauna. Our legends take us there. So as a traditional person, I can travel the world, I can tell that story, and I can get away with telling that story because I'm a traditional person saying a traditional story, and everybody can interpret it any way they want. But two sets of toolboxes, remember? So I have to offer the modern Western scientific lens on this story too, because our mothers gave us that toolbox. You know, our traditional education, the reading, the writing, the arithmetic, my high school diploma, my university degree, that all contributed to my my modern Western scientific knowledge. So I'm going to tell you the story using this lens. So in Cape Breton, Nova Scotia, they found a stone hide scraper. I'll use my phone. That's a stone hide scraper. And they noticed that stone hide scraper was very, very old. And they wanted to find out the date. So where it was sitting in a earth, they radiocarbon dated the materials from where it was found. And they found out that stone hide scraper was sitting there for 10,600 radiocarbon years. You translate or convert that into calendar years, That's 11 to 14,000 calendar years. And this site has been dated to 13,300 years. So, you know, it's right on, the story is right on target. So the that Stonehide scraper is our people, the fingerprint to a time where there was the extinction of the megafauna, because that is the same time period where the animals started to change, and we see the extinction of various species and the rise of new species that were basically them, but in a different form. So that is a story of evolution, expressed through my scientific eye. You know, the radiocarbon dating of archaeological find, which takes us back 11, 14,000 calendar years, gives the Mi'kmaq a fingerprint to a time where we were eyewitnesses to the extinction of the megafauna. So I got my traditional story strong, I got my modern Western scientific story strong. So as a person who has that modern Western scientific education, I can travel the world and tell that story, and only tell that one story from this side and get away with it. But I have two sets of toolboxes, I have two sets of responsibility on Mi'kmaq, and I have the two-eyed seeing sample. So I have a Mi'kmaq legend, a Mi'kmaq story, the changing of the animals and how Glooskap had done this for our people, that is backed by science. Science backs up my story. You know how powerful that is? I can tell the story and says, science backs my story up. That's powerful, man. Also, I have a scientific story that's backed by Mi'kmaq legends. That's powerful, man. If I can prove something and say, oh, look at the information from the Mi'kmaq who tell us this story. I have a fact and snippet from science that's backed by the Mi'kmaq. That's powerful. So in the two-eyed seeing model, my traditional story is no stronger than the science story. The science story is no stronger than the Mi'kmaq story. In the two-eyed seeing model, both stories have equal strength and merit. And therein lies our challenges with industry, government, and learning institutions to understand that traditional knowledge is not just us telling stories, it's us sharing our knowledge and sharing our traditional knowledge, sharing our science, sharing our music, sharing everything we have, and that there is a strong basis that academics can find strong support, and they can find meaning, and they can open many opportunities for universities, for industry, for government, for our communities to move forward and propel, I guess, portfolios, in my sense, in my case, the portfolio on moose and moose management. So that's the best way I can describe two-eyed seeing, is by setting the example and telling the story and creating the atmosphere for that story to be told. And you're hearing that story from a voice more ancient than mine, and you're also hearing it from voices much younger than mine that have not yet been born.
Clifford, thank you. That's a wonderful, it's a compelling and very clear explanation of an important concept that we've been learning in Unama'ki from Indigenous elders and knowledge holders. So thank you for that explanation. And if folks are interested, I think they can search for publications on written by Albert and Medina Marshall and Cheryl Bartlett that speak to this concept of two-eyed seeing. Thank you for that. It also helps us understand a glimpse of the very engaging stories that you tell in your community. You mentioned about stories that you tell youth when you take them on moose hunts. You've also shared those stories in more formal ways in schools. I'm thinking about the storybook that you were part of writing about the moose hunt. So thank you for sharing your storytelling. It gives us a good idea too of your relationships in community. And the project that gave rise to the Gundawiktuk play was called Songs and Stories of Migration and Encounter, and it involved singing too. And I wonder if that's, you mentioned you don't sing very often, perhaps mostly in ceremony, but I think Graham is somebody who does a lot more singing in community and actually abroad. I don't know, Graham, if that's something that you had wanted to speak about or share.
Yeah, absolutely. I was I still am a big mud drummer. I wake up each day and I give thanks to the drum, give thanks to the Creator each day. I wake up of what the drum has done to me, has brought to me, and very grateful for the path that has taken me all over the world, performing at numerous locations throughout Canada, United States, and Europe. But that's something that I've always promoted, our community throughout the world and our culture. Back in the 90s, I believe the Mi'kmaq Nation, through the Noga Crisis, the Noga Crisis that happened in the summer of 1990, it was an Indigenous community outside of Montreal, where the army was called in because the Mohawk people were unhappy of stuff that was happening on their community. And so the Canadian Army was called in, and there was a call for action throughout all Indigenous communities in Canada to stand up and stand with them in solidarity, to help protest this potential golf course that was being developed. And during that time in the 90s, to me, it was a phase of awakening, an awakening of our culture and our traditions that, as Mi'kmaq people, we were allies, and our Grand Chief Membertou back in 1610 was the first Indigenous person to be baptized with the Catholic Church in North America. So our faith was strong, and it still is strong today, with no disrespect to one another, even though with the current stuff that is happening throughout Canada of the finding of these mass graves outside of residential schools. It's very hard and very triggering to all Indigenous people through Turtle Island. But at that time in the 90s, when I started drumming, it was kind of frowned upon, by people in different communities, and I felt, I was lost. I was alone, with just a handful of people that we started the drum, and but we continued with it. We continued to strive with our culture, because when we look at ourselves globally, and where we reside in Mi'kma'ki, this is the oldest part of the New World through settlers' eyes. As you can tell, we've been here for tens of thousands of years. But everybody that migrates and lives in present-day North America, all of their ancestors has landed on these shores throughout the eastern seaboard of North America. So this area is, the oldest part of the New World. So as Indigenous people, the Mi'kmaq people, we are still lucky through a miracle that we have survived through all the trials and tribulations and genocide that has happened throughout these shores and throughout this territory of the bounties of killing our ancestors. We had a population back in pre-settler time 1 million people throughout Atlantic Canada. And it was recorded in the 1800s of down to 3,000 Mi'kmaq. And they were almost successful into completely wiping us out, but we still strive today. And when we've had that, when we are part of the oldest part of the New World, we are the tribe in North America that has experienced colonialism the longest. We have experienced so much hatred towards us, but we continue to pursue on. And throughout those trials and tribulations, our culture and our traditions were become lost. And we had to go to our neighboring tribes of the Anishinaabe in Ontario Territory that Mi'kmaq went in, and that's where, you know, we took our pipe and our culture and traditions and told the Anishinaabe people that we have a lot of settlers coming through this territory, so we want to keep our traditions and ceremonies here. And when the time is right, then we can come back to the territory and get them back. So they kept our cultural and tradition ceremonies in hand there until we were ready to get them back. And you know, that's a significant, such an amazing story of true brotherhood of Indigenous alliance throughout North America that we had to endure. So when we're membership in this community in the 90s, that started to awaken throughout all the communities of powwows starting to resurface, of ceremonies starting to come about to all the communities. And it was the drum that brought the nation back together, because we all had a lost identity. Through Indigenous people, we weren't even allowed to vote into the Canadian system until 1967, I think in the 60s. So, you know, a lot of our rights were taken away, so we weren't even considered human beings throughout the government of Canada. And that was, what, 80, 70 years ago. So, you know, it wasn't that long ago. So when we have that, we have this awakening, the awakening of Glooskap's spear. You know, there's a story of Glooskap when the lightning hits it, then he hits it again and he can walk. And, you know, those stories of how we are. It was kind of like that, an awakening of our nation again, to get back into, revitalize the language, revitalize the drum, revitalize the culture and the ceremonies and the people. And when that happens, we have the community. And I always say, when you look at the word community, there's another word in there, and it's unity. So we always had to unite. And for the drum today, you know, we are very proud to say, as Clifford, you know, sometimes I want to hang out with my cousin, but he's away and throughout Mi'kmaq territory, going at a powwow throughout Atlantic Canada. So the culture and the pride. I get so emotional when I hear about it today of the pride of our people and the pride of our culture and traditions and language. It warms my heart, and I always get emotional about it, because I remember days when that was frowned upon because of how the Catholic Church was instilled into each Indigenous community. You know, when everybody started coming to Canada and the United States. So with the drum, you know, I'm very grateful, you know, that I've learned to be on that road to express and showcase our culture and our songs throughout the world, and I'm forever grateful for that.
Yeah, the other day, grandkids were telling me, oh, we're filming today, Papa. I said, oh yeah, we got our we have to get these things signed. Hey, I said, oh yeah, okay. What are you filming? Oh, we're singing the gathering song. Oh, you know the gathering song? And they sang it in my truck without a drum, word for word. My God, man.
That's amazing.
Oh, it was powerful. Oh, the tears, you know, I'm a tough guy, man. The tears were starting to well up in my eyes. And so proud, and they sang proud. And I can't wait to see that. You know, maybe we can do something with the school to show that, or bring them into a performance when there's a good time for that, because they sang it so wonderfully. I'm amazed. And you know what? The stories always come together. The stories go full circle. And I remember this story when Graham was just in that confused moment, and he started traveling with the Sons of Nevertoo. You were like 12, right? And he went to, I'm telling his story because it connects to my story, it connects to magic, it connects to Glooskap, and it connects to our youth. It's a cool story, and it took decades to come together. And really, if you look at the big picture, it took thousands of years to come together. Yeah. But I'll tell it in modern context. So Graham was out there learning the drumming and getting part of that big circle. You know, he was a boy growing to be a man and learning from these men who set great example. So he was walking proudly. He had long hair back then, and he walked.
And it wasn't great.
Yeah. It was. Anyways, there was an elder. He was a Quedish. He was a Mohawk. Strong ally to the Mi'kmaq, the Mohawk. And, you know, we have a history with them, a proud history with them. And before we became allies, we did not get along, but we had peace within the nations. And an old man seeing Graham walking by so proudly, tells him, excuse me, young man, are you a proud Mi'kmaq or a proud Mi'kmaq? This is the word he said. He says, yeah, I'm a very proud Mi'kmaq. Well, sit down, I got a story to tell you. And he sat Graham down. And I'm glad he listened, because he imparted that story onto me, and I have the responsibility to share it now. And the old man told him, you know what? All the tribes in North America are looking for the center of the universe. They know there is a center of the universe. The stories tell them there's a center of the universe, but they cannot find it. Points at Graham, you have it. You have it. The center of the universe is on an island on the East Coast, and it's protected by the mightiest tribe of the land. Imagine the Mohawk saying the Mi'kmaq are the mightiest tribe of the land. It's at a cave. And when Graham told me that story, I said, can I use that? Oh, he also said, the center of the universe is so sought after that Sitting Bull came, our warriors took him to show him the center of the universe at Glooskap Cave, present day Kelly's Mountain, which we call Glooskap Mountain, on our map, right? So, why is it the center of the universe? And our legends tell us that Glooskap lived there with his grandmother, his companion, which was the pine marten, and they lived there. And it was time for Glooskap to leave, because they heard of nations that are going to be coming to North America, and they're not going to understand Glooskap, and Glooskap left us. So he started his journey at Glooskap Cave, and to go into the interdimensional realm of our people who have the concept of different worlds. It is fitting that Glooskap leave this realm through the center of the universe as the portal. So you go to Glooskap Cave, there's a lot of magic there. And we were there, remember Graham, we were there, and Graham climbed into the cave, and he prayed hard for all of us. Prayed hard for everyone that was there, our families. It was something he had to do. Maybe it was to validate and tighten up the story that was told to me by the elder, and you can add more to this. Prayed hard. while he was in the cave, things were happening to him. He can explain that. But me and another youth leader walked to the steps, stood on the shoreline, and I told my friend, I said, you know what? It would be nice if a whale showed itself. As soon as I said that, a whale jumped out of the water, almost a full breach. You can see part of its tail. It hit the water. We saw it in slow motion. The sun, it was like a 4:30 August day, so the sun was further west. So all the water on that whale sparkled gold. Gold. It was such a magical sight. And you go, whoa, did you see that? And kids, there's a whale. And the whale reached halfway, looked at us. We all made eye contact with this whale. Went down. Again, the water was sparkling gold. Swam away, popped up just 1/3 of its body. Swam away. Oh my God. We asked the whale to show itself. To me, that's the magic of Glooskap. That could have been Glooskap saying, I'm still here with you. I'm still here with you. You know, the kids, this 8th generation, that's the rise of Glooskap. And they were there. So Graham comes out of the cave. He looks like he's been through something. And we tell him, Graham, you missed it, man. You missed it. A whale just jumped out of the water when we asked it to. Well, I'm not surprised. I was in that cave praying hard for you guys, really hard. So Graham can explain what happened to him in the cave. See, this is magic. This is ancient magic that's coming through stories that he learned, 30 years ago, and maybe more. And then I had a student from Pictou-Landon, and it was the Red Road Project, and we were on the bus going to Kelly's Mountain, and Glooskap Cave, actually, doing a hike. And she says, Clifford, I don't want to sound crazy, but I want to tell you this, because I know you've got a good heart, and I know you listen. She says, I had a vision, and I see sitting bull on Glooskap Mountain. Tell me I'm not crazy. And I told her the story, just as Graham told me the story, just as I told you the story, and the tears flowed. And she says, thank you. You validated my vision, what I saw, and the stories continue. So stories keep coming up. But Graham can tell you what happened. Yeah.
No, it was such a, grateful day, and it's simple things of waking up to Creator. You receive a gift each day that you get up in the morning, and that's the gift of a new day. And we always have to thank, our God, whoever you are thankful for that day. And while I, being on this red road, all my life with my cousin, we've experienced and we've seen beautiful things in our eyes. And that was such a magical day that, when I went into the cave with my medicines and my prayer, it was such an amazing moment to be in there, because when I went in there, you instantaneously feel that you are part of the mountain. You are not in a cave. You are part of that mountain, that you can feel the rivers flow. You can feel the rocks around you. It's almost like you become that. And when you get into that moment, I'm seeing stuff, I'm seeing my visions and seeing, of what needs to be done and how we are going to help the nation. And, those are so amazing things that we've witnessed. And the whale plays a real integral part with Glooskap. The whale was there, helping Glooskap get around Cyril Mi'kmaq And, you are welcome to go look at the Glooscap stories and legends online. And it was such a amazing moment that you just have to, you are filled with emotion. You are filled with joy that you become, you're there for, it validates your identity. It validates, because we need that sometimes as human beings. What it does, it could be significant, it could be not significant, it could be a little thing, major thing that, we are all have to find our worth and know who we are, and to find out how we are going to accomplish stuff tomorrow. And every single human being has that. And they would just have to find it in their way. And, it was such, that mountain means so much to our people. It's very sacred. Our cousin owns a campground there on that mountain now. And back in when we were drumming, they wanted to open that as a quarry. And so all of us started camping on top of Kelly's Mountain to protest that we don't want to have a quarry here. And we've done that. And ironically, he owns a campground there that we get together and we share our cultural songs with Indigenous and non-Indigenous campers that come here every day and show our culture and the sacredness of Glooscap Cave. The nation is very grateful and honored to have Clifford there guiding Indigenous and non-Indigenous people to go and see the beauty of Glooscap's home and all of those stories. And while going down to the mountain, like it's so wonderful that everything happens on that mountain. It's I can't explain it into words. It's an energy.
Yeah, it's a spiritual cleansing. It makes our spirit is like a fire. And when there's things we do to keep that fire burning, and you have to have it that your blaze within your heart and spirit is so strong that I can stand next to Gray and I can feel his fire, and vice versa. And as humans, sometimes that fire goes down to an ember, and we can sense that as well. And it's our responsibility to fan that fire to make it strong again. So it does go in there. It challenges you physically, emotionally, mentally, spiritually, and allows that flame to come back. Whatever's going on in your life, whatever distractions you have, that experience brings you back so that your flame is burning or starts to burn, and you are the fire keeper of your soul. You are the fire keeper of your spirit. Your responsibility is to do those things to make that spirit strong again. So we have great shared experiences. But Marcia, we brought you there. Tell us the magic of your journey for that short time.
Yeah, I remember. Thank you very much, Clifford. I remember that you took my son and me on a walk. On the path, at the beginning of the path, you shared with us teachings about two trees that were there, a white and a red birch, and the ways in which the tree is connected with different living organisms in the area, where we were standing on the ground, and how that connects with all the living things around the earth. And then as we walked toward Glooscap's cave, the forest began to open up, and you talked with us about how that was an opening in terms of life coming to be in that special place. I don't know if that's an appropriate way to talk about it.
Yeah, but there was a song you sang. You were doing your yoga and you sang. What happened? You sang something from The Little Mermaid.
Oh,
Remember that?
Right, we were there with your granddaughter at the ocean, at
Yeah,
the beach, and yeah, that's right. I was standing on the shore, and I mean, I used to sing to kids, and I sang the Little Mermaid song. We were waiting around having lunch, and then all of a sudden, a young woman came up from the waters and started singing with me the Little Mermaid song.
yeah, it was like a mermaid came out of the water, started
Yeah.
singing with you on key, and it was like we planned that to happen, but that's the magic of the place. Somebody with a great singing voice met your singing voice, and you sang, I guess, very melodious, in tune, and right with each other. And we're just looking at each other like, wow, did this happen? Yeah, I think,
Lovely memory. Thank you.
yeah.
Um, I just wanted to note for everyone that right now it's 2:07 in Atlantic time, and what we'll do is we'll take a break at half past, and then our class will continue. And but we'll thank Graham and Clifford for their time. I know they have many things to do yet today, and Clifford's probably got to go back to a council meeting. But I'd like to ask one more question or make a comment before, if it's okay, if we open up the discussion, perhaps some of our guests and students have some questions.
By all means, yeah.
So in this class, which has just begun this semester, we talk about voice, the human voice, as something that's sonic, it's sound, it's something that's material. I mean, we can feel in many ways, right? The sound in our bodies. And it's a powerful metaphor, as you are speaking about how powerful it is to be sharing your stories. You're choosing the ways in which you're going to share them. And certainly in terms of stories that are now being heard. This concept also of hearing voices or listening is important. And some of the other readings that the students did for the class today was this really important book that's come out called Hungry Listening by a Stalo scholar, Dylan Robinson. And he speaks about, not just singing or voice, but also the importance of listening and the spaces in which we are uh, living, experiencing sound. Today, you both spoke very much about relationships with land, relationships with ancestors, mothers, fathers, moose, forests, stars. It just it gets me to think about more, about what Dylan has been talking about in his book. It's a complex book, um, really important ideas for everyone to engage with, but certainly non-Indigenous scholars and students like myself, um, really looking to listen, to hear what is right for us to hear, um, and uh, and just to think about how the different relationships involved with human and other than human beings. Um, Graham also talked about how it was through in the 90s when he started drumming with groups like the Sons of Membertou, where there was that protest for the on the mountain that made sure the quarry didn't happen. He found connection, he found community, he found belonging through drumming, through singing, and through his relationships with others. And I'm wondering if you might speak a little bit about that, if that makes sense to you.
Yeah, I think I'll answer the question, and maybe after that, we'll have Graham sing the song. Because after the question, he has his drum here, by the way, that's a big treat. But I don't want to lose my train of thought in answering your question about the human voice, the Unu voices, the voices of our people, and the ability to listen. There's a story I have, and I'm willing to share. So, you hear my voice. I'm a carrier. I carry the voices. I carry the strengths of my ancestors through my 58-year-old voice. But what's carried in my voice, because I'm speaking from the heart, I'm using spirit to guide my words. You're hearing my ancestors, you're hearing myself, you're hearing our present day generations, and you're hearing the future generations. So we have this incredible responsibility to pass that information on. I could say, oh, Clifford Paul's a knowledge holder. Yeah, a knowledge holder, blah, blah, blah. If I die and I didn't share any bits and pieces of that knowledge, well, it's gone, it's wasted, and I was very selfish with it. So we have to share these stories. We have to share the things about our people, and we have to keep our minds and our hearts open to what's happening around us. So I have this young fella, this would be about 4 years ago. He's 21 now. Nope, he's 20 now. And he was 15 at the time. So 5 years ago, this young fella was mentoring from me to catch striped bass at night. And we go to these remote areas at night while everybody is at home, sitting on their couches and watching Dancing with the Stars. We're out there under the stars in these environments. You know what I mean? Remote areas at night. So we're at a beach, and it's a beautiful night. You can see the stars, and shooting stars. You got the sights, the sounds, and the smells of Mother Earth. You have the waves rolling in, the tide coming in. And we're in this great environment, just as my ancestors have. And I'm sharing it with a non-Indigenous kid who wants to learn our ways. So we're there, and beautiful night, just a beautiful night. And you can hear waves crashing, you hear the winds blowing, breezes, and I could hear music. And it's coming from the cliff behind us. There's a 60-foot cliff behind us. And I can hear, and on top of that cliff is a field. And I'm hearing this beautiful music. And then I'm realizing the kid, he's got good senses, man. He's a 15-year-old and his ears are out like this, you know. And I can see him, he hears the sounds too because he's turning his head. And I notice he's hearing this beautiful music. So this is a story about listening. So I'm listening, I hear it, and I can see that he hears it, but we're not talking about it because we don't know where it's coming from. Maybe there's a car parked down the beach playing loud music. No. Then I started to realize this music is organic, it comes from the earth, beautiful. And it sounded to me like we have magic in our stories. We have interdimensional ways of looking at things. And it sounded like me, the stories of the little people, the Wiggle Out of Mooch, they were singing on the hill. That's what my brain was telling me. They're singing on this hill. And when you hear them singing, it's a gift. They might give you a song, which is a gift. Or you might have to pack it and get out of there because you don't want to have an incident with the little people. They're very powerful. They have powerful medicine. It could be positive or negative, but most people would not want to deliberately interact with them. So I started to think, should I explain to this young boy, this young man, stories of our little people and that we have to leave this beautiful place that we're having such great attachment to? And I know he hears it. He knows I know he hears it. So this is going on for over an hour. And I'm thinking, yeah, maybe we should back up. So I tell the kid, you hear that? He says, I've been hearing it all night. It's beautiful music. Man, I'm even getting shivers thinking about it. So I'm ready to tell them, let's pack up and go. Let's give the respect to the little people and let them sing their songs. And, you know, we're happy to witness this with our ears as listeners and to go. Let's just go. But before I'm going to announce that we're going to leave, I listen harder. Honest. I don't have as good hearing as that kid. I hear it. The waves stopped for a minute, slowed down, the breezes stopped for a minute, and the sound came clearly to me. It was the whales. The whales were singing way, way out, and their songs were carried over the water and bouncing off the cliff behind us. So I told him, it's the whales. The whales are singing. And we sat there and we fished the rest of the night and we could hear the whales singing. You know, you can tell a story, but you got to listen to the story too. And we listened to those whales all night. And after it was done, we packed up, we left. And I told him, you know what? I was ready to leave. And I told him the stories of the little people. And he says, oh my God, thank God it was the whales. But that is a story of, you know, you're in tune with Mother Earth. You're in these places, remote areas at night, and you're the only ones there. But the music, the song, the whales, it was just incredible, man. And that's the best way I can describe it. The story is through telling the story. But if you were there, oh my God, man, it was an awesome moment. Does that help?
Thank you.
Do we have time for Graham to sing and then we can take a break?
Oh, we sure do. Graham can take the
Or
time.
you wanna take a break and then I can sing?
Yeah.
Or
Um,
you have questions too as well, did you say?
I think we won't take a break unless you need us to, but we weren't going to take a break until we were going to, you know, release all the audience and then just meet again as a class later. So, are you asking us to take a break or ask some questions?
Yeah, I wouldn't mind taking a 5-10 minute break. I don't want to lose our audience.
Yeah, I'm not sure.
I know when you said break, I thought we were having a break, but that's the class having a break, right? And the class is
yeah.
correct?
So the class goes till like 3:30, but we'll have a little bit of a break and then finish, right? After you guys are.
Yeah. You got us for another hour and 12 minutes. What do you think, Graham? All right. Let's just take a 5-minute break here for us because this room is very hot.
Okay.
The air conditioning is working well in other parts of the building, but since this place is only used by us, the air conditioner's not on in here. So just going to take a little break to freshen up a bit.
Okay.
Rinse my face in cold water.
Yep. So we'll hold this space and I'll just close my camera, but at 2:25 we'll be right back here to listen with you some more.
Perfect. Yeah, and I think Graham is ready to sing.
Yeah, I'll be ready.
Yep.
Thank you.
How's it going now?
Good. Anna Hoofnagels, Graham says hello. She said good luck with the class. And thank you very much for the talk. She had to leave, and some others did as well. I think you know Professor Terry Gibbs at CBU, and Sheila Christie and Shauna McDonald. They were here. Anna Hoofniggles was connecting through from Carleton University, and Gordon Smith also from Queen's University. I see we still have Todd Hiscock here from Cape Breton University visiting, and some other guests, Don White, Logan McGowan, Wyatt White, Claire Pellerin. Thank you all very much for joining our class today. You're welcome to stay with us. Oh, and Terry said, I'm still here and hoping to hear the song before she has to leave. So that's great.
Hi, Terry. How are you?
Thanks.
Great. Thank you. Good to see you both, Graham and Clifford.
Yes, nice to hear from you as well.
Very nice. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to just slide my chair away so you can have the good light.
No, you can stay here.
Oh, okay. Just
Need your energy, brother.
I should have said nice to see you
Good
too,
job, right?
Marcia. But
Oh yeah,
that
that's
goes,
good.
that goes without saying.
You know what I thought, Graham and Clifford and I had been kind of, are we going to be able to be in person somewhere? Can I come to you? Whatever. And, there still is an issue with COVID. So we decided that, in terms of making sure that folks in member 2 are safe and people in the band office can come in and out and be safe in their work, I'm, connecting from Cape Breton University, and they are together in the community, which I thought was such a gift because we don't, unless you're able to visit a community you know, you don't get a sense of what the place is and what it looks like, and particularly as we speak about, you know, in relation to, you know, the world around us. It's a real gift that you've given us, opening a window like this, Graham and Marshall, into Membertou today. Thank you.
Yes, we are still here virtually, and we have good free Wi-Fi here. I can go around toward you, remember to know. But because of the song that I want to share with you guys, because of, you know, all of our important and amazing work that each and every one of those squares do. You guys are amazing human beings, and the indigenization that we've worked with and create because of collaborating with our Indigenous and non-Indigenous communities, and being the bridge to come together as one for a better tomorrow. It's always important to recognize who we are as individuals and where each of you come from as well, and honor you guys as well. And to honor that, you know, in big Mi'kmaq ways, when you're outside, you know, Nelder told me that never feel alone, because you are never alone. You're with your when you go outside, your shadow is always connected to you, and it never leaves you, and it's always connected by your feet. And when you look at your shadow, they say that is your ancestors. That is the people that created the human being that you are. So you'll always feel you're never alone, because your ancestors are always with you. So the song that I want to sing to you guys is the Ancestor Sound. And what this translates to is my ancestors, how they were. And the old ways are coming back, and they're coming together in the way of the thunder. Mi'kmaq philosophy is, when the thunder comes around, it's our ancestors coming. The ancestors are coming back. So that's why everything is greeted, you know, when we hear the thunder, it says, oh, that's it. Our ancestors are happy, you know, and they're blessing the land, blessing the territory. So, and as you know, as a side note too, that always sticks in my head is, as Mi'kmaq people, we were always told, you know, especially our family, we weren't allowed to go swimming until the lightning struck the water. You know, and that's happened through all of our communities, that, you know, because we weren't allowed. And, you know, in science, you know, they said, you know, because of the laying of the eggs and the frogs and the tadpoles, and how the water is, you know, when you have a test tube of water, it's very murky and organisms throughout there, and it's very cloudy of all the nutrients and the organics that are in this test tube. It's very cloudy, like in June. And it's recorded in the month of July around here that it's the most lightning strikes that hit the water, that it clears up the toxicity levels, the acidity levels there, you know, and the test tube is crystal clear in July. But Mi'kmaq way is that we would ask, well, how come we're not allowed to go swimming yet? It's a hot day. And the answer was simply that it's not our turn to be in the water. We have to let all the swimming brothers and sisters have their turn and take care of their young and the hatching of all their young. And so it was simply like, it was not our turn to share the water. And that's why water, you know, is so important to us, because we all share the water. So when we see it in June, it's simply not our time to go into the water. So as part of that, this is the Ancestor Sound.
Tahoe. That was beautiful, Graham. Thank you for sharing that special story and the song.
Thank you.
Well, Alan, thank you to you both for all of the sharing today.
Noga Crisis translates to all my relations. I want to thank you all. Meet my people when we say all my relations. It's not specifically towards to just my first cousins sitting next to me. It's all my relations. We are all connected. It's the two-legged here on Mother Earth. That these are my relations. Of all the four-legged, of all the winged, all the swimming animals. We are all connected. Everything on Mother Earth we are all related. So say all my relations, I mean every single one of these. Thank you. Merci.
I'm reading in the chat, people are saying, wonderful, thank you, amazing, thank you, so beautiful, thank you for sharing, Willalin. I'm wondering, Graham and Clifford, if I may begin with a question. And Claire Pellerin has said, thank you for this gift, it's beautiful. One of the students has posed a question in the chat. May I read it to you?
Yes.
Clifford, you spoke about how there is lost identity and how, as a community, identity is being found again. What offerings would you give to those Indigenous people who are still not part of the community due to traumas or being taken away from their Indigenous families and are still struggling with identity crisis and looking for connection with their Indigenous families, to learn traditions, legends, and culture, even though they might not know who their families are? How can we use our voices?
As Graham said, we're all connected, and there are people who are displaced or away, and they are yet to realize their gifts. As Indigenous people, they have a voice, they have spirit, they have stories to tell, or in this case, stories to learn. So the whole idea is to get involved, find a circle that makes you feel safe to learn all these things or relearn so that they come back. A friend of mine is from Newfoundland, moved to Utamagi, and he splits his time between here and Utamagi. There are no speakers left in Newfoundland. He learns the language so well by connecting with people who are related. As Graham says, all my relations, and he's connecting with people, and he's a better speaker than I am today. He is doing so well because he re-immersed himself in this environment. You have to take yourself to the edge of the far edges of your comfort zone. That's where that magic begins. So somebody who has been away, disconnected, or doesn't have the opportunity, start seeking elders and start finding people who are willing to help you and create that rapport, create that relationship, make sure it's all about trust, because if you're seeking knowledge, you're vulnerable, very vulnerable. So you have to be very careful of which teacher you accept, because some people might take advantage of their vulnerability. And some people will take that vulnerability and make you at ease and give you the way, knowledge, and work on the knowledge. And don't look for immediate answers to your questions. There is beauty in mystery, and things come together. It's like Graham's story, man. There was no need to look for an immediate answer. It took decades for that to come together. And guess what? Decades for us to tell the story, but it took thousands of years. And it's annoying when you're a teacher and somebody is looking for immediate answers. Because a lot of our lessons are life lessons, and you learn as you go through life. So I've had somebody from Toronto asking questions, and I told her, ease off on the questions, man. You're not going to get answers straight away from me. You have to live and experience, and things will happen, magic will happen, and the stories, the dots will come together, will be connected, and the stories continue. So too is our knowledge. Our knowledge is a collection of stories, events, the circles. Sometimes they collide, and that's where you get your resolve or your answers. It's not like you can open up a book. You can open up a book and learn things, yes, but that is very important. But also you have to be privy to the stories and to the songs, and to start going to events with an open mind, open heart, and it'll come to you. We're lifelong learners. When I'm dead and gone, I'm still going to be learning, still going to be teaching, and still going to be part of a cycle that's going to allow that growth.
And nevertheless, our race of people of who we are is a very unique one, because of all the harm and wrongdoing that our people have suffered, and our ancestors through the residential school system. through the 60s scoop era as well. We have a lot of relations that are throughout North America that we are still trying to find. We have cousins residing in Texas, California, and what I want to reiterate what Clifford was saying of people trying to find their identity, through all that, Indigenous stuff like that. First off is that it's not your fault. It's not your fault on that. It's because of how society was back in the 50s and 60s, and society changes in the 70s and the 80s. Sometimes they had no choice but to hide who they were and hide throughout the territory in order to survive. They didn't hide their identity because they were ashamed of it. No, they were hiding it in order to survive. It's just like old, New Scotland here and the Acadian, the alliance, couple 100-year alliance we have with the Acadians, and how we married one another as well and had children and our ancestry through that. And during the expulsion of the British, a lot of these Acadians had to leave down to New Orleans and through everywhere. And what also that was doing was breaking families apart. That that had to have been a heartbreaking day of when they had to set sail and go somewhere else, because a lot of families were broken up that day. And even that we've been enduring that for hundreds of years of officers going into houses and taking the children away from their homes to go to residential school to be, to be a better citizen per se. And the 60s scoop, and and our parents went through that and suffered through that, and we are still trying to find ourselves today. And we're getting up there now, but we are still finding our identity, finding out where we come from and who is our roots, because our race has been almost completely written out hundreds of times. And that's why I treasure every Mi'kmaq living in Mi'kmaq, because they're a miracle. It's a living miracle walking on Mother Earth because of all the stuff that we endure. So we treasure walking on Mother Earth and create new alliances and truth and reconcile with each other.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm wondering if anyone else has any questions. Students or visitors to the class? Yes, Todd. Todd, you were part of the Gundawektuk project, as of course Todd was involved. He's a theater director of the Boardmore Theater at CBU, and he is a devised theater expert. So he helped to craft a play in support of the work that our Mi'kmaq colleagues were doing.
Thank you, Marcia. Always great to hear from you. And thank you, Clifford and Graham, for today. It's been absolutely inspirational. So it's great to hear you speak. But I'm curious about, you mentioned early in your talk about your spiritual names. Clifford, Running Grizzly Bear Man, and Graham, He Who Talks to the Crows. And I'm just wondering how those, how your spiritual names affect or support or influence your voice, who you are. What's the connection there?
Good question. It's very personal, but I'm happy to answer it. In the 90s, at time of that spiritual convergence of our people, our community was going through a very hard time. We had kids in grades 5 and 6. For some strange reason, they joined up together and they had a suicide pact. And they went in the woods and they were trying to do this. And they were caught. Thank God they were caught. And this was happening in all the communities. There was a bad dark shadow that hit our communities, and there were suicides left and right. Every community was hit. It was like boom, 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 boom. And it's happening again. And we brought spiritual leaders into our communities. Our friends from the Anishinaabe friends who carried our traditions and brought them back, and they did ceremonies. And back then I was skeptical of the ceremonies, believe it or not. I was learning, but I wasn't really attached to cultural teachings. And my parents came home from a naming ceremony and they were uplifted. Oh, gee, my name is this, my name is that. And they're very happy with how that ceremony went. And me, I was very skeptical. I was a skeptical young man. And I go, oh yeah, that's mumbo jumbo, man. And my father says, he points at me, don't knock it until you try it, young man. Very firmly told me that. I said, you're right, I shouldn't be so critical. So I went in and on my own, I just walked. I noticed they were doing the ceremony and I walked in. They sat me down and there were several of us in the circle and it was very powerful. You can feel the fanning of the eagle. Although they did it with the eagle fan, you felt the eagle in the room. And your mind and your heart, because I opened up my heart. I made myself vulnerable. Opened up my heart. I opened up my mind's eye, the spirit in my brain, opened that up. And it was a beautiful ceremony. Beautiful ceremony. And I could see myself going through the forest at a high rate of speed. I'm thinking, they're going to name me Eagle Man, because I'm going through the forest at a high rate of speed. And I can see land shapes. And I see courage, I see healing, I see strength, stuff I needed at that time. And when it was over, they said, your name is Running Grizzly Bear Man. These are your gifts. These are your colors. These are your guardians. And the eagle was one of my guardians. And that's where the eagle came into the picture. And I have a lot of stories about eagles that can just knock your socks off. They're so powerful. And they told me, this was a name given to you by your ancestors before you were even born. That's powerful, man. That is very powerful. And as a bear man, I have responsibilities. And I have cubs. And my grandkids are my cubs. My kids are my cubs. I have responsibilities to show courage, to show strength, and to provide teachings and provide healing. And imagine if I live the red road, just as my cousin here, no drugs, no alcohol, none of that, no prescription drugs, none of the stuff that they're selling today legally, not into that. And imagine if every kid was told that, oh, your name is the man who talks with crows. And that name was given to you by your ancestors before you were born. Imagine if I was a troubled youth and that was told to me. That tells me my life is strength and vigor, and that I have a purpose in life, and that my ancestors knew the coming of my being, and the spirit name is brought forward. That's very powerful. So having a spirit name, and Aboriginal people can get their spirit names, non-Aboriginal people can get their spirit names. As long as they're connected to spirit, it'll happen, it can occur. And we have people in our communities that do these spirit names, they connect with spirit. And very powerful moment, very emotional moment. And thank God I spoke up when my parents came home, and they were very uplifted, obviously uplifted. And my being skeptical opened up my heart to what was needed for me.
I don't know how much time we have, Marcia, but my name, he who talks to the crows. You know, as Clifford was saying, it takes a whole new meaning, because the crow through ill new eyes is one of the smartest and wisest crows. You know, there was always a saying that the Gahwehch, the crows, can actually talk. It's like they're talking. So, you know, they're considered one of the smartest and birds around. And I'm so blessed throughout my life to have meet and have coffee and sit down with a lot of smart human beings throughout the world, throughout all the nations of Turtle Island. I've had great friends up there, Oglala, Lakota Sioux, and the Anishinaabe, and the Cree, and the Bloods. I have a lot of elders in different tribes throughout North America that I could call upon, and very prominent leaders throughout here as well. So it makes sense that I am always talking to the smartest of these and the wisest, you know, knowledge keepers, and like my cousin. So, you know, he who talks to the crows is the meaning of always around knowledge keepers and holders and elders and good influence, and being on the red road. My friends were men and women 10, 20 years older than me, because, you know, they were living the life of sobriety. So I'd always hang out with older gentlemen, you know, throughout my teenage years. So that's why I was called he who talks to the crows.
Those are very special stories. Thank you for sharing them with us. They're very precious. And Todd, that's a really insightful question. Thank you. Does
And
anyone...
Todd, a colleague of mine, Gail Christmas, said hi because she was in your class yesterday. So
Yes, she was, yes.
Really loves it and really enjoys it. And was telling me about
Great.
it all.
Great, thank you. And thank you for taking my question.
Yes, sir.
And sorry, I had to close the video a couple of times because the door kept getting unlocked and people were coming in, and I didn't want to interrupt the session. I'm wondering if anyone else has questions for Graham and Marshall, Graham and Clifford. Sorry, I keep reading the name that's underneath you. Whether from the class or the guests. Thank you. So Graham, Clifford, we're just about at 3. I wonder if this might be a good time for us to say thank you, Walalin, and to let you get back to your very busy days. And I think what I'll ask the students to do, the students of the class, to open up in our teams. I will go to our teams and open up in about at 5 after 3. We will begin the rest of our class, which is a business portion of our class. But before we break, I would like to ask you if there's anything else you think we need to hear or should think about as we're on this journey, learning about the human voices this semester together.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. It's an honor to share our gifts and to sit down and provide what we can within the limits and time frames and digital format. You know, it's stronger in person. And before we even came into this room, I asked Graham, so what are we doing today? I said, don't worry, man. We don't have to read from a book. We don't have to try to recite stuff. We have that knowledge. We have that capacity to communicate. And we were just ready for your questions. And of course, it came together so well. So it was an honor to share our gifts and an honor to be part of this classroom.
It's really our great honor, and Claire is saying honored to hear you today, and Dawn as well. Graham?
Oh, yes. Yeah, indeed. Very grateful, of having the gift of, one of our things that always we were told growing up is that, said there's a reason why you have two ears and one mouth. And all of us are like, why? We have to listen twice as hard than speaking. So I appreciate and grateful for you guys listening to our stories today. And, if you don't have any questions today or something, Marcia knows how to get a hold of us, and we can definitely relay back any questions or comments as well.
Thank you. It very truly is our honor to have you share with us your knowledge, your stories, your experiences, and your presence with us today speaks volumes itself. It's so important. I'm so grateful that you do the work with us that we do in the universities. Anna Hoofnagels, who was here earlier, heard you speak and invited you into her classes there. So what you're sharing is heard by many and appreciated by everyone. Thank you very much, Willalin.
Thank you.
Lalio.
And I'll see my students at 3:05 in Teams. Thank you. Thank you, Eric, for hosting us.
Thank you, Eric. Thank you, Marcia.
Right on.